Hello, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. It's 6:30, and there's a minute and a half left in the 2-0 Leafs game, and I'm sure that they will prevail. Madam Clerk, are there any regrets?
We have no regrets this evening.
Thank you. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see none. Are there two members who would like to move and second resolving in a committee of the whole? Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Duddick. If there's any objection, please raise your hand. Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The motion carries. Council, the first item is a consent item, and that's the assumption of the Green Ginger Phase 1, Stage 1 subdivision. We also have a consent item number 2, the Bressa-Mattamy subdivision agreement. Is there a mover for the consent items? Councillor Palmer, thank you. If there's any objection, please raise a hand. Madam Clerk, the consent items are adopted. Our first item tonight is a public hearing item. This is a public meeting report. It's going to be led off by our redoubtable senior planner, Rob Thun. And this is a meeting where we collect information from our members of council and or the public for issues that staff need to be careful of as they evaluate the application. No decision on the application is actually made at this meeting. A recommendation report returns to council later. Mr. Thun, we are ready for you to summarize the file for the public. Councillor Sandu is waving. Councillor Sandu?
Hi, Mayor Burton. Thank you for that. I just wanted to raise that I am very familiar with the report, so I would be fine without Mr. Thun's summary, but if the rest of council would like to hear it, it's up to them.
I think it's important for the process that we give the public an opportunity to hear it. Because
Excellent, thank you.
This isn't just for us. So, Mr. Thun, away you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll wait until the presentation's on the screen. Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of council. An official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, and a draft plan of subdivision application have been submitted by Argo West Morrison Creek Limited. This proposal relates to the development of 13 hectares of land in North Oakville. The report can be found on page 91 of tonight's agenda. And as you had mentioned, Your Worship, tonight's meeting is to introduce the application to council and the members of public and to obtain any further comments with regards to the review of this application. On the screen before council and the members of public is a Google air photo identifying the site, which is the star, and its context with the surrounding area. The subject lands, the star, are located on the west side of 6th Line, north of Carnegie Drive. The subject land and the abutting surrounding lands consist of vacant agricultural land, as you can see from the air photo, and it is also traversed by the West Morrison Creek. As council can see from the air photo, there's a variety of building forms along 6th Line. From the south, you'll see an apartment building, or apartment form. There's one just to the further south. You will find single detached homes further to the north. And also in the area that is under construction and development right now, there will be singles and townhouses. In addition, you will see on the east side of 6th Line, a creek block that contains the Morrison Creek that has been channelized as part of that development east of 16 Mile, or east of 6th Line. That channelized section, as you'll see through the draft plan of subdivision, will be continued on further north on the west side, as you'll see on the draft plan on the next slide. So the slide before council right now is the draft plan. It relates to the development, as I had mentioned, of 13 hectares of land for 88 detached units, which are west of the creek block, 122 townhouse units, which are principally just to the west of 6th Line, an 8-story mixed-use building containing 222 square meters of ground floor commercial. That is block number 7 in the top right-hand corner, and 103 residential units. This is the subject of the official plan amendment before council. In addition, there is a stormwater management block, which is block 113. There are several natural heritage system components to the draft plan, those being Block 108 and 109 with regards to the Morrison Creek Channel, as I previously alluded to, and also several smaller blocks down at the bottom, which would be additions to Core 5. And also the road network is part of the draft plan. Access to the site will be from 6th Line, as you can see from the slide, and also from the westerly development lands in this area here, which is the extension of Preserve Drive. Block 107, as I had mentioned, is related to the 8-story mixed-use building, ground floor commercial and residential above. Staff's been advised that those residential units are being considered as condominium in the future. Block 108 and 109, the creek blocks as mentioned, those are being reviewed in relation to the ongoing EIR FSS document that is being reviewed by not only the town, but also Conservation Halton and Halton Region. The applicant did host a public open house in December. No members of the public attended. It was at Town Hall, and written submissions were not received. The property is, this development, part of the approved 2020 Regional Servicing Allocation Program. And with this draft plan of subdivision and any version of this one, staff will be reviewing the on-street parking to maximize the number of parking spaces within the development for visitors parking. With regards to the secondary plan, the lands are designated neighborhood area and natural heritage system. The green portions on the left-hand portion of the slide are, the gray is the natural or neighborhood area, and the green is the natural heritage system. In addition, the master plan is part of the secondary plan. The lands are further identified as natural heritage system area, general urban area, suburban area, and natural or neighborhood center area, together with stormwater management facility for the proposed stormwater featured down in the bottom right-hand corner of the property. I must say that the master plan illustrates a concept that was generated in 2008 for the development of the North Oakville lands. It is one option. It's not the only option. There are many options to be reviewed, provided the principles of the North Oakville secondary plan are still being maintained. Staff will continue to review the development in relation to this master plan and the associated road pattern. From the official plan amendment perspective, which relates to block 107, the applicant is proposing an increase of height from 6 stories, which is permitted under the plan, to 8 stories, and also an increase of FSI from 2 to 4.2. And that is for the proposed mixed-use building within the neighborhood center, that's block 107. With regards to the zoning bylaw, the property is zoned existing development. The existing development zone allows for what is permitted on the day the bylaw was passed. The applicant is proposing, as you can see from the right-hand side of the slide, various zoning categories befitting the single detached, the townhouses, the mixed-use building, the stormwater management, the neighborhood center, or the natural heritage system, sorry. All of these are to permit the development of the site for residential units, the mixed-use building, the stormwater management facility, and the several neighborhood several NHS blocks. The slide before council right now are matters that need to be addressed. We have raised these issues. They relate from the EIRFSS to urban design policies, to modifications to the zoning and the OP while maintaining the secondary plan principles. They deal with residential parking, visitors parking on street, the transportation impact study, which is the parent document to the more formal TIS, transportation impact study for the individual draft plans, and so on. So there is a list of matters still to be addressed. These aren't the only issues. The application is still under review. And we still have comments that are outstanding from several agencies that need to be thrown into the mix as part of the overall review of the application. So all these comments, together with tonight, from the public and from council, will be included as part of the future recommendation report. So in conclusion, Your Worship, staff are putting forward their recommendation before, or shown on this slide, for the application to be received, the comments to be received, and the matters raised by council tonight to be addressed at the future recommendation meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thun. That was such a long list. The type was very small. But I trust we can all read it. If you are watching the live stream of this meeting and you wish to speak to this item, please call 905-815-6095, and we will connect you to the meeting. In the meantime, I have an indication of questions from a list. I'm going to make a list. Councillor Sanju, Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Elgar, Councillor Adams, Councillor Lischina. Did I leave anybody out? Oh, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Sanju.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Thank you, Mr. Thun, for your excellent information and for being so patient with the rest of council and myself and Councillor Palmer when we ask additional questions tonight. I actually have two items, and I'm wondering whether they're already on your list. If not, maybe something that you can add to your list. I wanted to ensure the addition of walking trails and pedestrian walkways throughout the NHS, as well as the area that you've already identified. I wasn't sure if that was already included.
I will take that under direction and include on the list.
Perfect, thank you. And then the other was, I was hoping you could provide me with a little bit of clarity. When we look at the report on pages 5 and 6, I'm seeing the designation for a mixed-use building, and on page 5, and then on page 6, we see the same building, or mixed-use block, it's item number or area 107. And then on page 6 in the chart, it specifically says apartment units. Can you get us a little bit more clarity on what's supposed to be in that mixed-use building? I understand that mixed-use buildings can have apartment pieces in them, but I just want to understand what that's going to look like from the developer.
Through you, Your Worship, to the councillor. For clarity's sake, the second table where it talks about apartment units, for lack of a better term, you can call them residential units. The building itself will be multi-story, ground floor commercial, or commercial on the ground floor. So you can walk from the sidewalk into a commercial unit. The residential will be above. So those apartment units, residential units, the 103 would be the second story to the 8th story.
Okay, and the second story through the 8th story, do we have any indication from the developer whether those are going to be rental units, rental apartment units?
Through you, Your Worship, my understanding is those are proposed to be condominium units.
Condo units. Okay, thank you. That provides me with a little bit more information. And then the last piece of information is actually a point that Councillor Hazlitt-Beale has brought up previously in a side meeting. It's around FSI. So we're seeing a big jump in the FSI from 2 something to 4 something, and only an addition of 2 additional levels. So they're going from 6 to 8 stories. But how does the FSI jump so much with just 2 additional stories?
Well, through you, Your Worship, the permissions for the neighborhood center are 2. So on a site like this, because it is a small site, it all depends on how the development is being proposed. The additional 2 stories would bring it up to the 4.2, but it's all related to the size of that site and how it is distributed on the site itself. So it is more a built form type of review and what that built form is going to be used for.
Could we get some clarity from the developer as to what that built form is going to look like? Just so we understand the density. We understand how many different types of units there might be in those 103. I understand them saying 103 for now, but I just don't know what that's going to look like. In my mind, I can't picture it.
Fair enough. I can take that as a direction to get clarity on that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Okay.
We now turn to Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Well, the parking, the on-street parking, I'm not not totally familiar how that's going to work. Maybe if possible, you can help me or assist me. What does that mean on-street parking? Is this designated areas within the abutment of the building sites, or is this right along the roadways? Is it metered parking? I'm not really, I just don't have an understanding of how that's going to work. Could you clarify that for us?
Sure, if I can just ask technical staff to bring up the presentation again. Through your worship to the councillor, you can see the road pattern that's on the draft plan of subdivision. When I'm talking about on-street parking, I'm talking the parking that's on the local road system in this area here, on Street A, down Street D, and in this area here. So it's basically, it would be the normal parking that would be on any residential street within a plan of subdivision. So if someone were to come and visit you, they would have a potential spot to park if the driveway was filled. So through the design of the draft plan, we're trying to optimize where those locations for those parking spaces are so we can maximize the number of parking spaces for the entire development.
Thank you. And just for my naivety, is it metered parking?
No, it is not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar is next.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. It's a question with regard to the street parking. How wide are the streets proposed to be in that of the Street A and Street B?
Well, if we can go back to the slide, streets B, streets B, C are 17 meters wide, so that is our local standard. Street D is 17 meters wide. Street A is 19, but the throat where it connects up to Marvin at 6th Line is widened out to 22, and lane A is 11. All these are public streets that would be conveyed to the municipality at the end of the day if this was to move forward in this capacity.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, with regard to the other financial impacts of the application are difficult to assess. When will we be able to assess the financial impacts of this proposed development?
Through you, Your Worship, I'll pass that on to Gabe or Jim.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of looking at the financials on this one, we will work with our staff in the finance department to take a look at what the implications are from Bill 197 on this particular application. We'll have a more fulsome response in our recommendation report.
I appreciate that because it's right now it just says it's difficult to assess. So when the report comes back, I'd really appreciate seeing that. So I thank you very much. And those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adams is next.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Thun, for the presentation and the conversation earlier today. I just want to follow up tonight and put on the list the issue of why does Street B not connect to up the Street A, and whether that's considered good planning and whether that street should be put in place to connect the area to the north, and whether there should be active transportation options there as well for pedestrians or cyclists.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Next, is Councillor Lischina, and then Councillor Palmer, and then Councillor Hassett-Deal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Sandhu's first question was actually my question as well regarding the accessibility to the NHS. So I'm thinking just more from a general rule for the accessibility because it's going to apply to the next public meeting as well for Ward 6. So what is sorry, Mr. Thun, where are you? There you are. What is the rule about, is it the number of homes that then the accessibility points, or is it the distance around the green space that you have, that you look for the the accessibility, including for obviously active transportation, but just general.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Lischina. There isn't a number of units type of review that says you'll put in a walkway for active transportation. We do, in an urban design perspective, look at block lengths of being a maximum of 250 meters before we do have to put pedestrian connections in. As an example on this one right here, Street B would connect up to the stormwater management pond. So the sidewalks on Street B would connect up to the walkway trail through the pond and into the NHS, which is blocks 108 and 109. Similarly, the street sidewalks will connect up to the Westerly Preserve Drive that's on Mattamy. So from a pedestrian perspective, sidewalks and connectability are already being addressed through this plan.
There's been comments made in the past about where these accessibility points are, and the fact that someone has to go or travel quite a distance to get to one. And then the immediate neighbors around there say that there's quite a bit of traffic because everybody is coming from the whole neighborhood through between their homes. So it's just the one point right now, is that what you're saying? Or 2 points?
Well, basically, you'll have 3 points on Preserve Drive connection, and you'll also have a connection through the stormwater management pond. In discussion with Councillor Adams this afternoon, he did raise the aspect of the connection of Street B to Street A through the units in the upper curve of Street B, which would be in the vicinity of lots 14, 13, 15, and so it would connect directly north onto a road being proposed by diagram. So that is a direction I'm taking to review further also, be it a road or be it a pedestrian connection.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Mr. Thun, for your report. My question, I believe you might want to pull up slide 4. Which just has a diagram of the development. So I understand Lane A will not allow any on-street parking. And I have a concern with laneways and condominium roads because there's 40 townhouses there. And I'm just wondering where we're allocating for visitors to park, just from what I'm seeing in our ward thus far and the issues that we've had with laneways and condominium roads. I wanted to know what would be the option to, or is there an option to extend lane A so that it is also the standard width of Street B and Street C to allow for on-street parking for those 40 residential units that will be there? And if not, is there a plan for visitor parking either somewhere in the laneway that's, more than the 4 to 8 spots that we see in most developments now, or an alternative plan?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Parmar, blocks 90 to 95 basically front onto 6th line. Through the 6th line construction project, there will be on-street parking. That is yet to be determined. We're still in the 60% stage of design, so the exact location, the numbers are still in flux. With regards to lane A being 11 meters wide, you are correct. It is a roadway with a sidewalk. There is no ability for visitors parking there. So that whole block from 89 to 96 and then 104, 105, and 106 have to be reviewed in relation to the concern with regards to on-street parking and how best to maximize those parking spaces in that, given the types of dwellings that are there, which are lane-based townhouses and back-to-back townhouses. I will take under advisement and direction your suggestion with regards to lane A being wider and the ability to accommodate that if possible.
Great, thank you so much. My next question is, what school is slated for this area and has the estimated number of new students being given to the board so that they can calculate those projections into their capacities and into their student body there?
Unfortunately, through you, Your Worship, to the council, unfortunately, I do not have the letter from the school boards in front of me, so I can't advise you as to which school they would be going to.
Okay, if you could just come back with that later,
Yep.
That would be great as well.
But to the larger point she raises, it seems to me the center of her question is the school board aware of the subdivision?
Absolutely, Your Worship. They have been advised, or they have been circulated with the application. They have provided comments. I just don't have the comments in front of me right now.
Thank you. I think that goes partway to answering the councilor's question. Correct?
Yeah, and also if I could just add to that, because I know that the school had provided projections, 10 years out. So I'm just wondering how closely they've worked with you in understanding that potential developments, and if we give an estimated population estimate so that they can take those numbers into consideration.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Hazlitt-Deal, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Tun, for the presentation and for actually clarifying sort of what comes up to this development. But do you have any sense of what the development might be beside it and to the north of it? I've got my geography correct.
If we can bring up the slide again, of the draft plan. To the north, in this area, through you, Your Worship, to the councilor, in this area right here, in June, we took the diagram development to, I presented that to council with regards to their development. To the north, where my cursor is principally townhouse units. These are, to the south of Street A in this location where my cursor is, are reserve blocks to be added on to the reserve blocks of this parcel of land. They also have the connection of the natural heritage system on their property and going further north. And where block 122 is on the screen was the discussion point at council on that application with regards to the 6-story apartment style dwellings that fronted onto that cul-de-sac and did not connect up to 6 line through at the Bowbeer Drive location. So that's to the north. So we've got apartment residential type of units, we've got townhouses, we've got the NHS, and we have single detached reserve lots. To the south, the application has not come in yet, but as you can see to the south, a large portion of that property is Core 5, which is part of the natural heritage system. To the east, you have principally townhouse units, and in the area of Marvin, so the intersection of Marvin right here, there are live-work units. So basically, it's a townhouse style of unit where the ground floor is commercial and residential. People are living upstairs. So if I were to have a business, I could use the ground floor for a commercial venture and live upstairs.
Thank you for that. My other question is in regards to the mixed-use building. Will they have underground parking?
Yes.
Okay, and so when they're talking about possibly using not having dedicated commercial parking and using street parking, is there a reason they couldn't have parking underground?
There's no reason why they couldn't have parking underground. What the applicant has noticed or garnered from the town's parent bylaw, there is a provision in the town's zoning bylaw that allows for on-street parking to be used for commercial. So the non-residential component of that building, they've applied for its special provision N2 in the neighborhood center area where it basically deals with the ability to use that on-street parking as part of their commercial component. They've asked for that. It hasn't been agreed to.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. My other question is just, do you have any sense of what the size of the units would be of the ones that are going to be in the mixed use?
Traditionally, the buildings that we've been seeing lately are around the 500, 600, 700 range, square foot.
Okay. And is there ever a discussion about why they wouldn't go rental, given the dearth of rental properties we have in Oakville? They seem to all be building condos, and we don't seem to have enough rental units.
Through you, Your Worship, to the councillor, I have not had that discussion, but I can bring that up as a comment to them and see what the reaction is to rental. Okay. And my last question is really around just if
if when you come back, if you could help us understand FSI a little bit better, just in terms of agreeing to the 8, is it intensifying that building from a density perspective, or is it just driven, the FSI has grown because of, as a result of potentially them getting 8 stories? It's a little bit still unclear for me.
Fair enough. I will through the recommendation report, further discuss that so it provides a clear indication for all of council and the public.
Councillor? Have we lost connection
I think
to?
she's frozen.
Oh, there she is. She's moving. So, Councillor Hazatil, is that it for you? Thank you, Councillor. I'm not aware of any other questioners. Are there any? Mr. Thun, the only thing I'd like to add to your list is that we have a policy in our official plan to discourage condominium roads, and I would extend that to say that implies we don't like laneways. These fine folks want an amendment to our official plan, and I'm wondering, if it's appropriate to have a condominium road in this subdivision, and so I hope that that issue will be addressed along with, from a policy perspective, along with the consideration that you already promised to give it in terms of the impact on parking.
Okay. Thank you, Worship. Just for clarification, Lane A, it would not be a condominium road. It would be a public town road.
All the more reason to prefer a full-size road then, I would think. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I need someone to move receipt and the addition of the issues that we've added. And Gabe will list the issues we're adding before I call the vote. Councillor Palmer, thank you for the motion. Mr. Charles?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In addition to the items that are listed in the staff report, what I heard from council was looking at a fulsome transportation plan, which would look at street connections, including Street B to Street A, as well as walking trails to the NHS and the accessibility thereof. Some clarity to the built form or concept for the mixed-use building. How we will address the financial aspect, especially with respect to Bill 197. Investigate options for maximizing visitor parking. Investigate residential tenure for the mixed-use block in terms of whether it would be rental or condominium. And as well explain how FSI is working for that particular block. And as part of the transportation work, look at what is the best dimension for that public lane.
Thank you. Council, it's moved by Councillor Palmer. May I put the vote? If you have an objection to the motion, please raise your hand. Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The motion is carried.
Thank you.
Now, did I skip something here? I think I made some notes on item 4 that should have been on item 3. That's how I confused myself. So we're now going to move to item 4, even though I've already written notes all over the item. And we have a presentation from Lee Musson, our senior planner. Lee, welcome. Council looks forward, and the public, to your information. And we'll connect you to the meeting. Lee, we're ready when you are.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council.
Your Worship, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's Councillor Ushtina. I only heard the last 4 digits of the number. I don't think the mayor's message was clear. Perhaps if you could just repeat it one more time.
Thank you, Councillor. That'd be 905-815-6095. 905-815-6095. Operators are standing by.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council. This evening, you'll find my staff report on page 123 of your agenda. This evening, I'm here to present an application submitted by Argo Joshua Creek Developments, where they've submitted an application for a draft plan of subdivision and a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the development of 600 residential units, a mixed-use block, stormwater management pond, neighborhood park, Dundas Urban Core block, and natural heritage system on approximately 40 hectares of land. Again, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce the application to council and the public and to obtain any further comments related to this application. If I could have technical help to put slide 2 on, thank you. The subject property is located on the north side of Dundas Street, west of 9th Line. The legal description of the property is part of Lot 8, Concession 1, north of Dundas Street. The subject lands are currently located between the Bressa and Dunoak subdivision with approximately 300 meters of frontage on Dundas Street East. The southern portion of the subdivision is separated by 2 holdout properties, one property located at 1297 Dundas Street East, and the second holdout property owned by the region of Halton. The Argo lands are generally flat. However, a tributary of Joshua Creek cuts through the subdivision just north of Dundas Street. If the technical staff can bring up slide 3. Thank you. The current application is outlined in red on this screen. In terms of surrounding land uses, to the south, Dundas Street, beyond which is the residential development consisting of townhouses, two-story detached dwellings. North of the subject lands is an application currently under review submitted by Mattamy Joshua Creek Phase 3. This subdivision consists of detached dwellings, townhouse units, as well as a school and 2 park blocks. West of the subject lands is the Dunoak subdivision, which was approved by the LPAT in 2019. This subdivision consists of detached dwellings, townhouse units, a Dundas Urban Core block, school block, and stormwater management pond. And to the east of the subject lands is the Mattamy Joshua Creek Phase 4 lands, which is a draft plan of subdivision which is currently under review. Beyond which is a larger Bressa subdivision, which was also approved by the LPAT in 2019. This subdivision consists of detached dwellings, townhouse units, a Dundas Urban Core block, a school block, and 2 stormwater management ponds. Staff are currently processing a site plan for the Bressa Dunoak, the Bressa Urban Core block. Next slide. In terms of the proposal, this application relates to development again of 40 hectares of land. The applicant is proposing 600 residential units, again a mixed-use block, stormwater management pond, neighborhood park, Dundas Urban Core block, and the natural heritage system. In terms of the breakdown of the units, the applicant is proposing 222 detached dwellings, 378 townhouse units, a mixed-use block which consists of 450 meters squared of commercial space, and 95 residential units. The natural heritage system, blocks 286 to 290, account for approximately 8 hectares of the subdivision. A stormwater management block is proposed at the southern end of the subdivision, and that is block 285. A portion of a neighborhood park block, block 285, is found on this plan and will be developed in conjunction with the Mattamy Phase 3 lands to the north. This subdivision will assist in achieving a complete community in this location with the extension of roads and servicing from the Bressa and Dunoak lands. The proposed zoning would facilitate the development of the subdivision. These lands are also subject to the 2020 allocation program. Next slide. The North Oakville East Secondary Plan designates the subject property as Dundas Urban Core, neighborhood area, park, and natural heritage system. The North Oakville Master Plan is intended to assist in providing guidance and coordination of local roads and adjacent land uses for the North Oakville planning area. Development applications are reviewed to ensure general coordination and consistency with the intent of the master plan. Minor modifications are permitted provided the general intent and direction of the master plan is maintained. The lands are further identified as natural heritage system, general urban area, suburban area, neighborhood center area, neighborhood activity node, stormwater management facility, and Dundas urban core. Next slide. The subject lands are currently zoned existing development, ED, as illustrated on the left side of the screen. The existing development zone only allows uses that legally exist on the date of the parent bylaw came into effect. The proposed bylaw, which is on the right side of the screen, proposes to rezone the lands from existing development to park, stormwater management facility, natural heritage system, and site-specific general urban, suburban, Dundas urban core, and neighborhood center area. Next slide, please. The applicant hosted a public information meeting on August 8th, 2019. No members of the public attended. Written submissions have not been received to date. Next slide, please. This slide reflects various matters identified by staff to date, and to summarize, and these matters would be addressed in a future recommendation report. Confirmation that the applicant is a member of good standing with the North Oakville East Developers Group, consistency with the provincial policy statement, conformity to the growth plan, regional official plan, and the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, coordination of the draft plan with the environmental implementation study to the satisfaction of Conservation Halton in the town, conformity with urban design policies on matters such as built form, lot sizes, transitions, compatibility with adjacent properties, and interface with public realms and vehicular access, the appropriate residential on-street parking and visitor parking, location of walkway blocks and village squares, design and functionality of the mixed-use block located in the neighborhood activity node, coordination and phasing of the proposed local road network with the adjacent draft plans of subdivisions and Dundas Street, and confirmation of appropriate road and lane widths to ensure functionality. And my recommendation report will also include any additional items identified this evening by council and the public. Next slide. In conclusion, staff put forward the following recommendation for council's consideration. Staff will be returning to council with a recommendation at a future public Planning and Development Council. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As soon as I see council, I'm going to start a list. And I've got Councillor Chisholm, I've got Councillor Elgar, I've got Councillor Adams, and we'll start with Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. It's about parking again in the residential areas. It says, I just need clarity or a detailed of what you mean by appropriate residential on-street parking. That doesn't tell me anything. I really need to understand how that's going to work. So can we, in the next iteration, that we have some kind of detail on what that means? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar, then.
Thank you, through Mayor Burton. It's regarding the village square. I wonder if staff can explain exactly what the village square, what it will have in this development.
Typically, village squares are smaller than your neighborhood parks. They would have a play structure, some benches, some seating area, maybe a small area to throw a frisbee, but it's not the main park for the area. This subdivision does have a portion of the neighborhood park, which would be developed in conjunction with the Mattamy Phase 3 lands.
So, because I remember years ago when Dewani was there, the village square was going to be where you stopped, the bus stopped, and you ran out with your coffee from the nearest Starbucks and everything. But I've noticed this one isn't even 60 feet by 60 feet, the whole area. And I'm thinking that's a pretty small, even to throw a frisbee, if it's not even 60 feet long, 6 feet wide. And I'm just trying to figure what game we're playing here when they call it Village Square. So it's not going to be buildings. It's where somebody can go and sit on a bench. Is that what we're now calling a village square?
Through your worship, typically they have a play structure. Our Parks and Open Space staff do ask for facility fit plans. When I report back to council, I can give more detail as to what is anticipated to be within the village square.
So when we're doing all these developments, I'm just wondering, where are these buses going to be stopping to pick up all these, what is it, 600 families? So say 2,000 people. Where are the plans for the buses? And do we have that yet in place of how that's going to work?
Through you, Your Worship.
That's a lot of people. Yeah, even if it's 3 people per residence, average, you're talking almost 2,000 people.
Through you, Your Worship, as part of my recommendation report, I can give you more detail as to the transit routes. My understanding is the transit will be going up Street C, which is the north-south road. It will also be going along Street A, which is the east-west road, and bus stops will be located along those two roads.
Okay, so there will be no Starbucks like they were that they were all imagining then in any of these developments by the look of it.
Through you, Your Worship, the mixed-use block does anticipate 450 square meters of commercial use. There could be a Starbucks potentially within that block.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thanks, Lee. Thanks very much.
Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the communications with our staff earlier today on this issue. I have a couple of issues that I want to bring forward for staff to review in preparation for the upcoming report. They include whether an east-west connection between Street C and then lands to the east would be appropriate, and if not, would a pedestrian or cycling access point be appropriate? In the master plan design, that road connection is shown, and it's disappeared in this iteration or this context plan that's being provided to us. So that's my first item. And the second item that I want to bring forward relates to that mixed use block 278. I'd like to have a better understanding of the details of how that will function, both from a parking perspective with the adjacent lands and its own non-residential uses that would be associated with it. And the third item is if staff can do a full review of the parking adequacy, especially with respect to the townhouse sections, and how the upcoming parking study may or may not apply.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Dale.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I have a few questions just in regards to, on both the public meetings tonight, we've gotten zero feedback from the public. And it strikes me that, this 120 meters, I'm not sure even how many people that actually would have gotten to, given where they are. But can you does the Residents Association not comment at all on these applications? Because there is a Residents Association.
Through you, Your Worship, to the councillor, we do circulate the Residents Association. I have not received any comments from them.
Okay, all right, thank you for clarifying that. In terms of the mixed use, is there been any discussion about rental versus condo?
Through you, Your Worship, no, I haven't had any of those discussions with the applicant at this time.
Okay, and could that be reported back on the final report?
Most definitely.
Okay, and to follow up from where Councillor Elgar was, is it possible to report what the percentage of active green space is by population or either projected number of units or population? Because I think one of the concerns and responsibilities we have is to make sure that there's enough running room for people to enjoy. I get that it's a more dense community, it's a more urban structure, but I agree with Councillor Elgar that Village Square seems awfully small, and making sure we have some ratio of active green space. I had understood that was one of the targets we had set, and I just don't see it in the report. Perhaps I just missed it.
Through Your Worship, I can include that in my future recommendation report.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you for your report. So just two quick questions, and I'll just follow up on the parkettes that we're talking about, the village squares. Is in addition to the village square, is there a neighborhood park, or is it just the village square?
Through your worship to the councillor, there is a portion of a neighborhood park on this site. The park itself, on this particular development is, I believe, 1.6 hectares in size, and it's to be developed in conjunction with the Mattamy Phase 3 lands to the north, which is 2.84 hectares in size, which would give an overall park of 4.4 hectares, whereas the official plan says that neighborhood parks must fall in the range between 4 and 4.5 hectares. So this would fall in the range once it's developed with Mattamy.
Okay, and just to provide some further insight on that to my council colleagues, so in Ward 7, we have a lot of neighborhood village squares and parkettes, and then we have the larger neighborhood parks, which are very, quite spacious and very well used by the community. And I guess that was all part of the plan in planning these neighborhood areas. So maybe some more information on that might help my colleagues as well, to how many parkettes we can anticipate versus how many neighborhood parks, and to kind of understand the difference. I know Councillor Sandu and I see them and are in them all the time, so we kind of get that concept, but it's not really seen anywhere else in Oakville. So I think that would definitely help. And then my second question was, it was a comment based on Councillor Hazlett's comments on the 120 meters distribution of the notice. And I've asked for this before. Can we start getting a number of how many households that went to, instead of it was just distributed in the radius there? Because it would make a difference to us knowing if it went to 0, because a lot of these developments are taking place on agricultural lands, and there is nobody in the vicinity that the notice will go to. So it would help us to know how many people it actually went out to. I'm sure we keep that information tracked somewhere, so if you could just include it in the report, that would be helpful to me at least. And those are my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Lischenna, are you next?
Thank you, Your Worship. As the councillors were asking these questions, something just kind of struck me. The way the building happens, because there's been a number of residents that have complained about the construction, the mud, the pollution in the air and all of that. So the way these communities are being built, is that looked into with respect to, if you're building something higher up and then all these people have to drive through a construction zone to get to their house? Just how that, is there a step process to that?
Through you, Your Worship, to the councillor, our development engineering staff do look at construction routes as part of the engineering review. They determine, where trucks will come from what roads, and keep them off the local roads and probably more on the major roads. And unfortunately, when you're, living in a new community, there is going to be some construction. It's short term. But our engineering staff does look at construction routes.
It used to be well understood that if you bought a new house in a new subdivision, you were going to have 5 to 7 years of construction, and in return for that, you were getting quite a lift on your property value when the subdivision was finished. Nowadays, maybe that understanding isn't quite as widespread as it was when I was coming through home ownership and resolved never to buy in a new subdivision. Anyone else? Then perhaps we could ask, I'll just get someone to move the recommendation. That would be Councillor Lischenna. Thank you so much. And Mr. Charles will mention the items to be added to the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And in addition to those items that are listed in the staff report, what I'd heard was providing council with some more detail with respect to visitor parking on street as well as within the townhouse areas. Look at the Village Square programming, provide some detailing on the preliminary facility fit plan. Look into the more details, I guess, from the transit plan that was done several years ago from the implementation, as well as provide some information with potential transit routes. investigate connection from Street C to the Bressa subdivision to the east, look at the mixed-use block, the concept for that, as well as the tenure of the units in there, and the percentage of active green space to the population, provide some information on the master parkland agreement, as well as the distribution of parkland throughout this area.
Thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there is none, and the motion is adopted. Council, I think we just got to the point where we can rise and report to council, if that's not contradictory. We just need a mover of the motion to rise and report. Councillor Knoll, thank you. Any objection to rising and reporting? Madam Clerk, there is no objection. The motion carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 1 and 2, public hearing items 3 and 4, as noted by the clerk. May I have a mover and seconder for the report? Councillor Chisholm and Councillor Palmer, thank you. Any objection to the report? Madam Clerk, there is no objection. The report is adopted. We now come to new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature. Council, I join all of you in noting the passing of our very long time and much esteemed colleague, Ralph Robinson, and I look forward to the fall when his family has promised to, when the COVID pressure lightens, hopefully, to make an announcement about the appropriate observation and celebration of his life. And I know that Councillor Robertson, who holds the seat he held, and developed quite a nice, close relationship with him in the final years there. I know that you in particular join me in these wishes. Anyone else with anything for this section of the meeting? Thank you. Then could I have a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws? Councillor Longo and Councillor Elgar, thank you. This is for the bylaw to partially assume registered plan 20M-1163, that was item 1, and the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of a meeting of council. Is there any objection to the bylaws? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The bylaws are adopted. Thank you, Council, for your many fine questions and the time you spent studying these reports. And that completes the work before us. It's been great working with you, and we are adjourned.